Good evening and warm welcome to all the participants. This is session number 229 on WiseViews Leadership Conversations, and we are joined by Mr. Anil Kumar. Welcome, sir. Good evening. Thank
Good
you
evening,
so much
sir.
for joining.
Thank you so much for having me here. Yes.
Pleasure, sir. We will do a brief introduction. Permit me to share my screen. Yeah, these are WiseViews Leadership Conversations, which you are seeing on the screen right now. This is 229th session, and this session will be led by Mr. Anil Kumar. He is the founder and managing director of Great Sports Tech Limited. And the topic he is going to lead is innovations in sports infrastructure, trends and opportunities. This is a very new, very interesting subject which was not touched upon till now on our platform. So let me quickly go through the introduction. Mr. Anil brings over 30 years of international experience to Great Sports Tech Limited. Under his leadership, he has executed some of the most prestigious and innovative sports infra projects over the last 21 years across 10 countries in South Asia. He is a charter member of TAI, CEO Clubs India, a member of the National Sports Committee of FICCI and CII, and a founder director of Sports Engineering Association of India. Fantastic. He worked at Wipro Technologies and Ramco Systems in India and the USA before starting Great Sports Tech. The Great Sports Tech Limited, as an organization, was awarded India's top 100 SMEs out of 49,000 nominations, awarded Best Professional Services in Sports Award by FICCI in 2018 and 2024, the Scotch Achievers Award, and various other awards as well. Mr. Anil was recognized widely across various platforms of media. Some of them are Emerging Entrepreneur Award by CII. He was also featured in the Young Turks program in CNBC TV 18 and similar other business programs on ET Now, NDTV Profit, so on and so forth, apart from business publications. He is a regular speaker in various forums like FICCI, TAI, CII, and at various seminars on sports and on entrepreneurship. Mr. Anil is a first-gen entrepreneur with engineering and MBA degrees and later an executive development program from Kellogg's School of Management. He was a national level sportsman in athletics and handball. He also achieved state honors in NCC. I think that roughly sums up what he is, and therefore he looks so fresh and handsome the way he is. I would like to stop sharing the screen here. And sir, this is a very interesting topic for us, and we would like to learn from you in terms of the role played by the sports infrastructure, which is often underestimated or people are ignorant about it. I think that takes the center stage today and makes it all the more interesting for us to learn from. I request you to start your presentation, and we are all ears. I once again welcome all the members around the screen for joining on a Friday evening like this, which is sandwiched between several festivals. It looks like all the festivals in this world are loaded only in this month of March. And but in spite of that, so many people have joined live on Zoom as well as live on Facebook. I welcome all of them. Over to you, sir. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much again, sir, for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be part of this series. And yeah, so over the next few minutes, I'll try and just give a perspective of what led us to what we're doing here. I believe a lot of participants today are entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs, and I will try and see how we can also give a perspective on how our journey has been. As you thanks for the detailed introduction as well. As you mentioned there, I've not actually I don't come from a business family, so I'm a first generation entrepreneur. So, but it was always my idea to try and do a business on my own. I believe, and I have great respect for entrepreneurs who give it a try, irrespective of the size, because of a larger goal, a larger mission that they are able to achieve in terms of value addition, in terms of the employment generation. So I salute all the entrepreneurs who are here, at different levels of successes, and I'm in the same journey. So having, again, what we do today also has some bearing to my background also, where I was a national level sports person. And therefore, I had some insight into what were the limitations and challenges, and therefore the opportunities also in that ecosystem. And coincidentally, my work led me to obviously being in the US for some years, but also to Europe and other places, and seeing what I could observe there and how the sports ecosystem works there. I felt that when I come back to India, that this is what I would like to do. Merging both these perspectives of me as a sports person on one side, and then seeing what is it from a business perspective also that the opportunities are. So when we started the business, we were very clear that we want to do very innovative sports infrastructure. Otherwise, just doing something that everybody is doing obviously has no relevance, meaning, and very poor chance of survival as a business. So incidentally, we were the first to introduce this new generation artificial grass in India way back in 2004 when we started, because that we knew would be a game changer. Today, most of these pay and play facilities that you see, the five-a-side futsal fields, the school playgrounds with synthetic turf, all of these are exactly originated from what we introduced in the market in 2004. Of course, many other companies, other variations are now proliferate. Having started with that, then when we realized that a lot of the work also we do with the government, we realize that it's the same client who also does the synthetic athletic tracks. So we began to do a lot of synthetic athletic tracks, and I'll touch upon some of the aspects. I have a brief few slides also to just give a visual context to what I'm saying, but just as an introduction. And subsequently, again, keeping in mind that we want to make sure that facilities are multi-sport and multi-purpose. Typically, at that time when we started, everybody just assumed that the government will be the only entity that will invest in sports, and therefore there was no concept of trying to see whether there is a financial viability or a return on investment on that. But we wanted to change that. We wanted to make sure that it is viable even for a private sector entrepreneur to have a facility, and the only way it would be financially viable is if they can have multiple sports and also use it for non-sports. So around that time, we also introduced the concept of turf protection system. So globally, again, this may be a bit of a surprise for many of our participants today, but globally, most of the stadiums actually also develop as venues for concerts, and which is just about beginning to happen in India now. In India, for all these decades, it was seen that stadiums are something that you should not touch beyond sports, but that's not true. It's not financially viable to have a huge stadium being in existence and independent, while just promoting sports. And you may have a televised event or a full gate collection, hardly 10-15 days in a year. It's not viable to have the stadium pretty much not generating revenue for 350 days a year. So today what you see recently, again, Coldplay and Ed Sheeran and many of these concerts that happened are because of some turf protection tiles that we supply to stadiums as well. The other thing that we also did is we saw that many cricket matches actually get called off after it has stopped raining because of the wet outfield. So we have done an interesting project at Chinnaswamy Stadium in Bangalore, where we have done a vacuum-powered suction system. So it's a vacuum-powered drainage that takes out like more than 10,000 liters a minute. So my point is that we've tried to bring in more and more innovations to make sure that there is a financial impact, but every stakeholder, whether it is the player on the field, whether the administrator, the broadcast guys, everybody has a value derived from that. So this is the way, when the topic being, innovations and the opportunities. So I want to highlight that it's not the conventional sports of just doing some tennis courts or basketball courts that are, very, very common. So anybody looking to venture into this, the opportunities are huge. And I'll touch upon it more in the Q&A as well, especially with Commonwealth Games confirmed for India in 2030, as well as India pitching very strongly for the Olympics in 2036. And irrespective of whether it gets awarded in 2036 or 40, very much India's direction is there. And typically sports also mirrors the growth of an economy. And I think compared to what we were 2-3 decades ago, India is in a very good shape. And I think this is the sunrise for the industry in that sense. So anyway, with this brief background, I'll just go on to just to finish a little bit of the introduction of the company itself. So some of these approaches actually allowed us to now have, as you mentioned, executed projects in 10 countries. We've done a few thousands of projects, everything from, obviously hosting at the highest level to even at the very, many of our facilities are not necessarily at the highest. Maybe this is a good point when I can just maybe just share a brief few slides on what exactly we do. Let me know if this is visible, please. This is incidentally an example of a project that we've done not too far from Hyderabad. This is at Wagzan University, about an hour out of Hyderabad. And again, this is a good image of how a very grand, world-class sports facility can be and available right now in India as well that way. Having said that, let me just go to the slide. See, typically the misconception is when people think of sports infrastructure, they think only of these huge stadiums like the Narendra Modi Stadium with 1 point whatever lakh seating and all that. But that's not really true. I just want to mention that when we begin to plan for a facility, we kind of have a detailed discussion with the client to understand, is it a recreation or an amateur level facility? Is it meant as a serious training level facility, or are you intending to host competition certificates, certification? Based on that, then we are able to right size and optimize the investment, because not every facility needs to necessarily be all this world class with huge seating if it's not going to be financially viable. So residential community will be completely a different design and outlook and investment versus a university versus a training center versus a proper stadium that will host a future match. So there are and many elements that we go into. For example, any idea of, I don't know if among the audience whether they can respond or not, but for example, all the fields, I don't know if anyone noticed, but they're all aligned north-south. Interestingly, because it is to ensure that there's no shadow that's coming from east-west onto the pitch. So all these are there. And then there are many such aspects. If it's an indoor stadium, then we factor in, what is the height of the ceiling, what are the minimum requirements from by way of, say, badminton or whichever, for what is it for an international level versus an Olympic level as well. And of course, other factors like a fire exit and all of these also that we do that. So I'll just touch upon a few very, very common things that most are aware, and then go on to some of the other innovation that I mentioned. Like these are, of course, the typical what are called, I mean, people say, sorry, they use various terms for this. They say synthetic coat, which is technically correct, but synthetic can be anything that is man-made. But the correct term for these, what are coated on, are these called acrylic coats. So these are made, with the bitumen surface below and acrylic coating on top. There are anything from 2 layer to 8 layer, with some cushion systems, and a lot of work goes into creating the subbase, typically a bituminous subbase, but also sometimes with concrete. But there are many stages that go in prior to what you finally see as the output that may have the acrylic coating on top, like it's showing here. Of course, these are used for tennis and basketball, and more recently even for pickleball. Again, a sport that's become very popular in the recent past. The surface is the same, the dimensions are obviously different. And just then there are, of course, indoor courts that you may have of various types. What I'm talking here, one option is, of course, the polyurethane courts. You have wooden courts. You have wooden courts with cushioned flooring on top. Like typically, when you probably see high level badminton that happens, like here, these are typically with a wooden floor on top of which a few typically 5 millimeter thick PVC cushion floor is actually installed. So Yonex, as you may have heard, is a very popular one, and in the recent past, leaning as well. These are again. Then there is a combination of what are called hybrid PU coats, which is not acrylic, not entirely polyurethane, but a mix of the two. You also have nowadays a popular option is interlocking modular polypropylene tiles. These can be indoor or outdoor, used for multiple sports. They are also certified by FIBA for basketball, for ITF for tennis, the respective governing bodies. So and some of them higher end ones come with some good shock absorption as well to make it very easy to play. And some varieties also have a good wooden look, actually like a wooden flooring. So these options do exist. And I'll just skip through some of the, of course, this is the other one I was talking, which is, of course, nowadays more popular called, which is a synthetic turf for football. But while people see this football pitch from the surface and it looks almost like natural grass, these are designed actually to also have infill. Now, this is a cross section that not many may be familiar. So there is a silica sand layer, then there's rubber granules and all of these that go in at the right ratios. The end objective being that finally the ball behavior, the ball characteristics should be exactly mimicking a good natural grass field. So when we get this certified by FIFA, so they have various tests to see what is the ball bounce, what is the ball roll. There's a min max. When you roll a ball off a ramp, a specifically designed ramp, it should roll a minimum distance. There's a min max to its roll. If it's rolling too much or too less, it doesn't pass. So there are 7 different types of tests that are conducted: vertical rebound and all of these at various spots on the field before they certify a field to be FIFA certified. So this is typically what you see in many I-League matches. In fact, right here in Hyderabad, Srinidhi University also uses a synthetic turf field for the I-League matches that they host. So, and a lot goes into doing that as well. There are suitable sub bases with embedded drainage systems, all of that before the turf is laid and then completed. Similarly, there is hockey as well, almost a similar process, but the turf is different. That is designed to allow for a harder ball to roll faster with, of course, sprinkler system also. And this picture actually that you see is actually right here in Secunderabad at RRC, Railway Recreation Club. So this is a FIR certified one that has hosted national level events, tournaments at the same venue. This also has a very elaborate subbase that goes into it, including a bituminous subbase, and then the laying of the turf on top. And then there are, of course, these, you can use the combination of these turfs and tracks, but especially in a non-competition kind of venue, you can use these for many multi-sport. Then the ones that you see as synthetic athletic tracks, and these are the ones that you see where all the athletic events happens that you see on TV, or many of you may be using in more and more stadiums in India now. So these are actually made of course, the subsurface is bitumen, but what you have on top is actually a mix of polyurethane embedded with rubber granules. And there are various types within it called sandwich system or full pour. I'll not go into details of that, but suffice it to say that this is very different. Some people may wrongly call this also as turf, but that's not really true. This is a synthetic athletic track, and where the polyurethane, which is the heart and soul of a track, is then sprayed or embedded with the rubber granules, good SBR rubber or EPDM rubber at the top layer. And then there are, of course, very specific, laid out, very rigid guidelines by World Athletics. Incidentally, when we are executing the project, you'll be surprised to know that there is, in a 400-meter track, the leeway we have of variation is only 1 centimeter in 400 meters. So the kind of accuracy that goes into preparing these, including the slopes, for example, that come from the outer lane towards the inner lane, the track shouldn't be too hard, too soft. All of these will affect in terms of the pace at which the athletes can run on that. So they're highly engineered and very high precision kind of execution projects that way. We have, of course, in various colors also, these are done. Now I'll just come to an interesting recent development. The ones that we covered are relatively more conventional. Just 5 minutes, I want to touch upon 3 or 4 other innovative ones. A recent past, in the last few World Cups, because of this debate whether synthetic turf is the best choice for football or most other grass-based sports like baseball for that matter, or whether it should be natural grass, between synthetic turf and natural grass, there's always been a debate. But interesting, in the last few years, actually last quite a few years, this option called a hybrid turf has actually come up, where there are, for example, typically about 20 million individual fibers that are embedded in a football field, and natural grass is grown between those fibers. So the grass grows above the fibers, and the game actually occurs on the natural grass, but the fibers below provide excellent support to the natural grass system. In fact, with the roots intertwining with the synthetic fibers. So this is a brilliant concept where you get the best of both worlds, and which is why it's called this hybrid system, called with a mix of synthetic turf and natural grass. So this is allowing the grass to be healthier. It allows more matches to be conducted, less damage. Yeah, so you can see the most elite stadiums globally all have hybrid turf now. And India has also begun to have that. We recently did a project for FC Madras in Mahabalipuram. So India is beginning to adopt a hybrid turf as well. The other thing I want to touch upon is also this is called modular grandstand. Now, typically, you may you may imagine that most of the stadiums, and it is true that many of the stadiums have concrete seating galleries. But a more recent innovation in the last many years, of course, now is modular grandstand, where it is a completely steel structure. These are custom designed, and I'd have videos to play if somebody is interested. We can share, or your viewers are welcome to visit our YouTube channel of Great Sports. But basically, these are coming at less than half the cost and one-fourth the time. And they also last many decades. So we have done a 15,000 seater stadium in Mizoram and a 20,000 seater stadium for South Asian Games in Nepal. In fact, the picture that you see on the left is completely a modular grandstand. So it's designed in a manner where you take into account static loads of a person, number of people who can stand on that, dynamic loads of people moving, wind loads, earthquake loads, seismic loads as they call it, and also designed so that in an emergency, how many people should be, rather whether the entire capacity can egress the stadium in say 6 minutes, as per whatever are the guidelines. So these are very well engineered, custom designed modular grandstands as a substitute for the conventional concrete stadium. So these are the ones that are there, some examples. I'll not go through the process of that. And of course, PEBs, as you may be aware, though it started, pre-engineered buildings, started typically for small structures and for some warehouses and other factories as well, now are very popular for sports. So the picture you see here on the left is actually for what we have done for IIM Indore as a complete indoor stadium, multi-sport, multi badminton court kind of facility there, high ceiling, lighting, air conditioning, everything comes in there. This is the solution, that the vacuum powered subsurface drainage system that we implemented at Chinnaswamy Stadium. This is the reason why actually BCCI conducts many of its monsoon matches actually in Bangalore, because they know that the minute it stops raining, we can ensure that the field is ready for play within 5 minutes. So this is drawing out water like 10,000 liters a minute. And this is a highly engineered system with a 200 horsepower suction system and aeration system below the stands. Right through the year, it is actually more an agronomic tool where it is pumping fresh air to the root zone. So there's a complete network of pipes, almost like a 5 kilometer, 5,000 running meter kind of a network of pipes, perforated pipes in a closed loop system. So the roots actually need fresh air. So the system keeps pumping few minutes, every hour. But whenever it rains, it could be middle of the night also. You don't need 100 people coming in, covering the entire 15,000 square meters with covers. You can leave the ground completely open except the pitch. And then the system activates from a pumping action. It will reverse itself into a suction mode on its own due to moisture sensors that we have embedded in the outfield. Of course, it has temperature sensors, oxygen sensor, all of that also. But the moisture sensor is the one that allows it switch over from aeration to a drainage facility. So this is now become very popular, and more stadiums are asking for this to be installed. So we are likely to do some more of these projects. And this is the last slide that I may have. I touched upon this as to how stadiums especially need to become multi purpose as well, apart from multi-sport. And this is an example of how Transstadia, it's a beautiful example, because it is a public-private partnership project in Gandhinagar in Gujarat. And this is the reason I mentioned this is for entrepreneurs who may look at any of these ventures. I think to make a sports facility financially viable, there are many, many ways that you can look to use it for non-sport events without damaging your sports surfaces. So you have typically even, this is where ARM, this is, I think, particularly a setup for ARM on show. But there are many occasions like, we have Narendra Modi Stadium, elsewhere, Coldplay, Ed Sheeran, JNU Stadium, all these. Even abroad, this is a very, very popular concept called Terra Plus for the turf protection system. So anyway, I'll stop here. I thought just 20 minutes in terms of what is there. Typically, some of the innovations that are there. I'm not talking about swimming pools and floodlighting and many of the other conventional ones that we do. But I'll pause here, sir, and I'm open to any questions or to talk on any aspect in more detail, either from a sports perspective or from a business or entrepreneurship perspective. Happy to share my thoughts.
Great, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's a fantastic detailed introduction to this topic of sports infrastructure. You have taken us to the bitumen via silica sand and up to the grass. So in a sense, a cross-section of intro to the sports infra, which I think is much needed, and people need to develop a perspective on this area. If it is of interest to the entrepreneurs, there are lots of opportunities actually to get into. As a nation, sporting is something which we are supposed to we are expected to do much, much better compared to other countries, countries of similar size and similar age and a similar temperament. I think we need to do better. But what I really love in the way you have explained to us is that these innovations in terms of technology, innovations in terms of purpose, that is to reach the viability, economic viability, multi-purpose, multi-sports, and sometimes no non-sports opportunities as well that we need to look at. That gives a very interesting perspective. We can use stadiums for convocations as well. We can use stadiums for marriages as well. I think
Yes.
large format activities, large format occasions can always be used in facilities like this. Very interesting, sir. We have lots of questions in this area because how it applies to different situations in this country per se, number one. Number two, different sporting requirements may have different kinds of turfs or the grounds that we are supposed to prepare. And the third and the most important area or the bucket of questions would be in the after having laid all the sports infrastructure, what remains a bottleneck for us, in terms of our performance at the level that other countries do. What remains a bottleneck is another issue that we'll come to. It need not necessarily be infrastructure. So we will touch upon those things. I want to thank you, sir, for this wonderful presentation. We are joined by a large number of people. I want to thank all of them for joining on a Friday evening. People have come from sustainability to media to education, technology, finance. There are people from the private equity space who have joined. They have some questions to you. People who have joined from education, of course, they are there. Technology, media, as I mentioned already, and a couple of chartered accountants also have joined. I welcome all of them, and now we will have the Q&A. I request Dr. Prasad to start the first cluster. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rao. Thank you, Mr. Anil Kumar. It has been a very new area in the sense for many of us who are around the screens. And given the kind of integrator that sports is, I mean, it's kind of so whatever we do, economic, I think this has the potential to be a catalyst, a multiplier in many ways in terms of thinking, in terms of influence, in terms of passion. However, the awareness of things is much less. To that extent, this session can contribute quite a bit to the way people are thinking. So I'll start my first question. This connects it up personally. We know this background about how important sports is, and then you were there in that particular area as you grew up. And how did you make decisions on your career, your mission, and how did you shape your journey as you go along from where you started from?
Sure, sir. Thank you once again. It's a bit of a difficult question to answer, but I didn't start off necessarily thinking that I would do a business in sports. Again, it is just that looking back, kind of those things coincided because of the many years that, growing up, like, we just discussed a little earlier that you're a year senior to me in school, and, I've been very active in sports from the school years and pursued that even through, later at the national level, right through till my engineering days. It's incidental that subsequently, when I was looking to move back to India, and then I had some perspective of how it was globally, that I was then correlating back to what are all the limitations that we have and why. Again, I can't claim to necessarily say that, I had a great vision about how this is going to solve all the problems, but certainly at that moment, it appeared to be that there are such fundamental drawbacks or limitations in what we had in India at that time, and to some extent even now, but largely at that time in 2004 when we started this. So it just started off to seem like that this is an area that needs to be addressed sooner than later. We may have been a bit early in the market, but we don't mind it, because if that is clearly a pain point for us as a country, I knew that at some point its time will come that, that there will be emphasis on good world class sports infrastructure. And I think for us to not only come in there early, but also come in with the right innovations, I think that would be the way to go for us to have a sustainable run as a company as well.
Excellent. I think the most prominent point was that, yes, I mean, the background kept you on it. Maybe you got curious, you were looking for things around, And the second point is, I think your approach that its time will come.
Yeah. Sorry, if I may
Very.
also add, incidentally, while in the US, very remarkable, the government has almost zero investment there. The government doesn't really step into the sports infrastructure. And it's completely opposite here in India, where at least in 2004, there was almost no private sector investment at all. And everything that was there in sports needed to be done by the government or quasi-government like a PSU or defense or something. But it's a model where if it can be viable financially for a private entrepreneur in the US, at some point it certainly will be. And I think many game changers have happened where with the broadcast right and more recently with online access, it's become viable that a sporting event can bring in the kind of revenues that will justify the investment that goes into infrastructure.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think, your point about its time will come is equally applicable, not just in sports, but in a lot of areas where India is not yet there. A lot of segments of the population also. And that it is innovation which brought you where you are today, trying to improve what is there and with respect to the needs of the situation. And certainly for a country like India, the cost also matters. And therefore, your thought process into that certainly has facilitated. Thank you for that. I'll move to the next question, and this is about how do you trigger this kind of thinking process, passion, while still in education. Large segment of Indians are still in the largest segment of the population is still studying, and if there are even 2 to 3% of people who start thinking in a certain way, which is easily maps into the number of people who play sport, it can act as a catalyst again towards national objectives and goals. So what are your now this is a larger question. What are your perspectives on the opportunities and issue? Not limiting yourself to sports infrastructure. I'm sure you have a lot of ideas on many things, and I know that you've been thinking about this. Your time and resources, maybe you're focusing on sports infra, but can you give us your inputs on the subject?
Sure, sir. I mean, of course, while I've have probably far more thoughts on sports particularly, and there are opportunities there I'll touch upon briefly that even for entrepreneurs to come in, I think it's today, I think parents are that much more open-minded in terms of spending time and money, not beyond cricket as well, to encourage their kids to take up any sport because this is something that everything from very basics like hand-eye coordination to fundamentally being able to avoid, obesity at a young age, adolescence, and then overall preparing them for pretty much anything and just that sport teaches itself. So everybody who's taking up sport is not necessarily taking up with the intent that they will all go on to represent India or become an Olympian, which is a great thing, which is fundamentally a shift in the culture. So, and I give this background because it means that when there is a culture shift in a country of our size, it means that there is also humongous opportunity that it opens up. So not just cricket coaching centers alone. Today, for entrepreneurs, I think there are opportunities to have many more pay and play facilities that will become viable very, very quickly, probably a faster ROI than most other businesses, I would say. So being able to set up a good multi-sport facility, being able to, nowadays there are aggregators as well online, which you can get plugged into so that the space availability you have is immediately published. They know which hours you have some, ability for people to come in and play. And, run it pretty much with lights and all that around the clock and then use it even for non-sports. There are many government spaces, again, in many instances, and certainly in Telangana as well as in other states. The governments are very open, including municipalities, where they say that if you have a plan of investing and building up a facility, that they are ready to give it on a certain basis, a certain duration for you to run it as a pay and play. So at every level of investment, not necessarily the example I was talking about in Gandhinagar, where that large trans stadia that I was telling about, which may cost a few hundred crores, but anything from a handful of lakhs to a few crores onwards, there are opportunities at every space in the sports arena. But because your question is a bit larger, I'll try and venture an answer. I feel that India has largely been more a service provider. I would say even in the IT perspective, if you see, for the most part, even the large companies have been pretty much just I would say for the, not really product creators. And I'm contrasting between, not to undermine what an Infosys or some of the other ones do, but relatively our value addition has been mostly centered around cost arbitrage and not so much a value addition, except now, perhaps I think in my era, I was coincidentally also part of Ramco Systems, which was the first ERP product, so to say, from India. Now, Zoho doing a lot of products. I am, and I think this kind of extends into other areas. We ship out a lot of ore. We don't actually create we again import back the finished product. So I think for a lot of entrepreneurs now, capital is probably less of a problem than it was even 20, 30 years ago. If you have a very good viable venture and you have the right promoters with the right background, I think the domestic consumption itself is a sizable market. So if you're able to innovate and if you're able to create something that can get consumed here, there is also a significant export market also where we can be very competitive. So again, I was recently in Sri Lanka and had the opportunity to interview, or rather on a stage, I was the moderator for a session with Mahela Jayawardene. And among various other things that we are speaking, he is incidentally also a co-owner of a very popular chain called Ministry of Crab, one of the most popular seafood chains. And he said that, the best of crabs are actually, so to say, cultivated, caught, everything in the Sri Lankan waters, but they are actually shipped to Singapore where they get served in the best of restaurants. And he realized that why are we doing that and why don't we actually have that here? And then that's how his venture came about. And I think it's a great example of why we would have, a lot of raw material, a lot of intellect as well, but we are not doing the final value addition. Again, this is beyond my domain of sports, but these are my thoughts on why I believe India is at the right place for many, many entrepreneurs to come in and set examples that are going to be globally acclaimed.
Excellent. I think at the level at which the question was, you have responded with a broad picture. I'll get a bit specific now. There is a target floating around of exports of sports good, 8.1 billion. Not a small figure, not a figure which you would have discussed maybe a few years back. Now, if you look at more specifics, because now that there is a target there, and if you are advising others, so what are those specifics which cater to the response that you just gave at a macro level for entrepreneurial opportunities, which are easier to pick catch given the kind of policies which are there, given the kind of needs which are there, and which perhaps also cater to India. A lot of Indian models are where it also gets consumed in India and then it gets exported. So, can you give us some specific areas where entrepreneurs want to venture, where they can target the markets needed, and it's not too far away? I mean, you came in, you are a pioneer, you have learned so many things. So, if there are entrepreneurs who are coming in now, what specific areas would you, and can you throw some light on why you think those areas are the ones?
Oh, sure. Yes. I mean, one very good point that you did bring up is on the sports good. And I think when there's a lot of buzz around it. The government is doing everything it can. It has designated that an industry would like to support it. And I think we have every element of all that goes into creating the best of sports goods. It's ironic that Pakistan actually exports probably far more than India does. And that's quite an embarrassment for a country our size. Which also means that there is such an opportunity as well, both domestic consumption as well as globally exporting globally. But on a broader picture within sports, if that was what your question was, as I mentioned, pay and play would probably be a very logical standalone or a chain of centers. I think Hyderabad has Game Point, very, very successful. I think Aditya Reddy does that. I think that's a model. Again, Aditya comes from non-sports background, so to say. Again, his love for sport, but then comes from an IT industry as a profession. But he and his brother have successfully started Game Point, and they're building up multiple chains and have now actually raising, I think, sizable amount of funds and looking to expand nationally. I think that's a great example of how in the last just 8-10 years perhaps that he's created that. Again, a great example to follow. But you can have serious academies as well. Many, of course, have tied up with well-known sports persons who are associating with that particular academy and able to help with some of the finer nuances and identifying the right coaching talent. And therefore, that becomes another opportunity as well. So there's on every aspect, there's even apparel. It's not just sports goods, but also sports apparel. That's something that the apparel industry, the textile industry in India is very highly developed, but perhaps not yet fine-tuned towards the sports applications, which again could be there. It could also be sports equipment, not just manufacturing, but it could be anything from, I mean, even currently today, we are embarrassingly importing in our business as well, importing a lot of fundamental, very basic sports equipment, like what goes into athletic tracks, everything from the aluminum curbing to the steeplechase to the hammer cages to all of that that goes in. For every athletic track, we're still importing. And this is an opportunity that, some who have a good insight into the manufacturing side and a flair for it can get into. There is also opportunity in terms of sports engineering. You can actually, even somebody who may have an engineering flair and a design flair could actually design every. I mean, right now, as you know, apart from athletes who are perfecting their own performances with every aspect possible on nutrition, on training, on psychology, and everything. The equipment they use, everything from the helmets to the bikes to the shoes to the javelins, everything has an opportunity and a potential to get further enhanced. And every microsecond makes a difference when you're at the Olympic level. So there's that. So there's just really very vast, almost every facet of the sports industry. And then, of course, there are even software applications. Like I mentioned earlier, there are many companies that are now building applications for software analytics. Some are into aggregators of pay and play facilities. So there's just extremely large spectrum, a wide spectrum of opportunities that are there in the sports arena.
Thank you for portraying a number of areas and opportunities which are visible to you right now, given your experience, and I hope that many of the younger generation will look at it. Now, coming back to the government and its role as a facilitator rather than what it was doing in the past. You did mention that municipalities, they're willing to give the some kind of facilities in which you can. Now, if you look at the cross section of governments in India, state governments, central government, of course, there is this Bharat Niti which has come out last year. Apart from that, at the policy making level, what do you envisage? I mean, what is nearest, what needs to be facilitated from the government side in order to encourage more such entrepreneurship?
Oh, I think first of all, I think if we are designating this as a sector that we would again, are you talking specifically on sports, Dr. Prasad?
Sports.
Yeah. So again, thank you for. So if that is really a focus, if India wishes to kind of portray its soft power, so to say, as a sporting nation as well, and therefore it's in line with that soft power kind of pursuit that we are bidding for the Olympics, and we want to be seen as a nation that has arrived, not just in terms of gross GDP, but actually as a powerful nation as well. So sports is a big medium to achieve that. If that is a larger objective, I think the government has to go many steps towards encouraging entrepreneurs in this space. First would, of course, like for any typical entrepreneur, I think having a pool of, from which investment can be provided, when there is a viable opportunity or a viable investment that is being presented, of course, after due vetting by a panel, like T-Hub has here in Hyderabad, as you know, for many of the entrepreneurs. I think the venture capital by the government that allows it as a seed funding to take on a few steps. I think, especially if this is going to be, some of the ventures will fail, and that's where the government has to step in, taking that chance, because it will still be the bigger beneficiary eventually when, even if 1 out of 10 ventures actually succeed globally in a big scale. So to that extent, I think the government can create a venture fund and allow for the sports ventures to be funded, and of course monitored, of course vetted very well, and to be under scrutiny to see if they're progressing well, and at what point they will have to pull the plug, which is fine. That's exactly how you'd rather face any failure quickly rather than spend too many years, too much money, and then realize it's not going to happen. So you can have a panel of entrepreneurs who will, or successful merchant bankers, you have what have you, who are able to vet it and verify whether sustained investment is possible or not. So you have these parks, where, or hubs where entrepreneurs will be able to just have an idea, and everything else is supported by mentorship, by investment, by continuous monitoring, opening opportunities internationally, all of these. Of course, you want to get other things like tax holidays, which again are being done right now, for example, in the semiconductor space. You also, the other thing that kills a lot of small companies, and this may not be particularly restricted to sports alone, and we face that as well, as a medium-sized company also, is in terms of the delays of getting paid when we do business with the government. So that it becomes a killer actually for our growth, because as a growing company, you want to be able, you're always in need of working capital. You want to keep investing and furthering the growth, but we continuously keep getting bogged down by delayed payments from the government. So at some point, to say that, no questions asked, you have a completion certificate, you will directly be paid 90% of the amount, and then the remaining paperwork can take its time, and then you will get paid, for example, in the subsequent 60 days or whatever for the remaining 10%, something like that. And maybe allow for security bonds to be provided, insurance bonds, instead of having to provide performance bank guarantees. All of these substitutes that will choke, the innovation, the spirit to come through. So these are the ways that we encourage, where the idea and the innovation is nurtured, it's encouraged, it's supported very well, and all the other challenges around it are kind of taken out by different entities of the government.
I think there are many ideas in what you say. I mean, governments are putting a lot of focus on category A items like, AI and analytics, etc. But then stuff like sports are equally important. They're more steady, stable. The experimentation levels may not be as much. And so, what governments can do there, the space you have listed out a number of things that they can do there. And also, I think in the health space, there is this, obesity issue that we don't want that amongst our citizens, because with all that only you can actually spiral to where you want to be, and particularly the younger generation. So I think it fits in, and there's a lot that which can be done, and I hope that something happens in this space. Thank you very much, Anil Garu, and I'll hand it back to Professor Sudhakar for the next cluster.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you, Professor Prasad. That's very interesting, sir. I have one question to start with. In the late 1990s or in the early 2000s, I think, within Hyderabad, a lot of stadiums were built by Chandrababu Naidu government at that time in Hyderabad. Multiple stadiums in various parts of the country, various parts of the city. Have they taken off, or what was the problem there? Looks like most of those stadiums remain underutilized, even if I don't want to say unutilized. So what was the problem there? Because that came across as a fresh whiff of encouragement for sporting folks in the city, and I thought the surge would happen at that time, but looks like subsequently they remained underutilized. Your comments, sir?
Sir, it's a good observation. I think, and I can also say from the government's perspective that there are some limitations in also expecting one marquee facility to therefore kind of completely change the culture of a city or a larger entity in terms of its. So when you build something like what happened, what is there currently also in Gachibowli, there is no denying that what was done at that time for the Afro-Asian Games and national games that were hosted there, it's a brilliant, very large, very high scale, international class sports facility, multi-sports there, and which continues to still be the primary facility where international level events, recently we even hosted the World Hockey Women's qualifiers as well. The thing is, when you build competition level facilities, there will naturally be some restriction on the general public coming and using. There are, for example, what kind of footwear that you use or what sports you may generally just play. It is not like a public park. I mean, I don't mean to sound a little bit, kind of making it as if this is elitist or in any manner like that. But that's the reason why I was mentioning at the start of my presentation that there are some facilities that will be for recreation and amateur level, some that will be for training level, and some that will be for competition level. So to that extent, having said that, as to why Gachibowli, stadium, for example, itself is not, completely changed the culture. The root cause is not so much about that. That itself has at least spurred people's imaginations and brought sports a little bit more to the forefront of, people's discussions. But what generally really is needed in a country like ours, we have about 800 districts, but most of our sports facilities are centered only in state capitals. We have hardly any district, I would say less than 100 districts that have any reasonable sports facilities. And even if we did have in the entire 800, I don't think we are reaching out to a large section of our population. So we don't need these sports facilities that are going to cost hundreds of crores. We need facilities that may need probably less than 5 crores per location, but probably in 800 districts, we may need probably at least 5 to 10 per district, where these are typically even at the taluk level. Some of them based on population, you may invest only some very basic ones that have a simple multi-sport turf and a small athletic track and a small indoor facility, probably no more than a couple of crores. Slightly larger taluks, you'll probably have something that maybe 3-5 crores, and district headquarters can have something that need an investment 10 crores, so thereabouts. So if you are looking to therefore bring about a fundamental sporting culture, but also importantly, like many people, it's a very popular question, right? We are a country of 125 crore, we don't get all these medals. The number of like you also said earlier, I think 2-3% are at most pursuing sports. I doubt if it is even that, because there's so many other things that people are, you don't have a safety net. For example, I think recently even Pullela Gopichand was also talking about, it's very difficult for many families to have their child take up sport as a full-time profession. And this is, if you need to really excel at an international level, that's what you will need to do. So do you have a safety net for those who do not make it to the elite level, who representing the country and later being eligible for pension or some jobs or not? But that mid layer, typically by the time most students come to ninth class, there's a huge, a steep fall actually at that point, where much of the talent also goes. By then the parents are cracking the whip saying, okay, you need to now focus on the studies. Doesn't look like you're going to become another next Tendulkar. So, but we have to also define whether as a nation our objective is that we want to win more medals, or we want to be a healthier nation with a sports culture. And in which case it doesn't mean that everybody has to necessarily become a champion. You just need to make, obviously, like I said, grassroots level more facilities available at various places. Like I said, 800 districts could need probably 5,000 sports facilities, from really tiny to medium to large. And then we are you know uh, not going to be a nation of just armchair critics or something. And it's nice to see, frankly, I would say that from 20 years ago to today, I personally see a lot of change in the sports culture. There are many people who now go and play just for the fun of it, just for the camaraderie and the bonding and the joy of playing. All many of these pay and play facilities, they are all in their maybe late 20s, 30s, even 40s, or even older, and they are not playing obviously to become an international champion. They're playing purely for the fun of it. And that is, I think, something that we should be looking to encourage, whether from by the government or as a culture, and celebrate, just a residential community that's having its own sports, this thing, to anything like that, a corporate having whatever small tournaments that you may have, just for the fun of, and joy of what sports brings.
Some interesting points that you have shared are like, we need to understand our objective as is, if you want to look at the sporting culture, is it medals, or you want to create recreational sport, healthy nation. Because of playing, you will become a healthy person. So what is the focus for us, and what are the lateral benefits that we can accrue by more number of people playing? I think that's a very fundamental shift in our thinking that we need to look at. And the second and the most important thing is the focus in terms of number of a large country like India having 800 districts, and infrastructure is lopsidedly focused and present only in capital cities. That's a very strong point. which means that, roughly 5,000 facilities to be initiated as quickly as possible across 800 districts. And then the safety net issue, sir. I have very recently heard that some schools in Hyderabad are providing a parallel track of education that acts as a safety net. There's a school in Hyderabad in Nanakramguda, and they've just launched a parallel route of admission into their school, and that's taking care of safety net. I hope more number of people get into that, so that you don't stand to lose when you focus on sports as a full-time activity. And then if you don't make it to the top honors, do you stand to lose your educational base, or do you stand to lose the other opportunities that follow? Very interesting, sir. Thank you so much. But there is an associated issue that I would like to take you to. As you know, ICFAI is present in about 20 cities in this country. Out of that, we have 5 universities in Northeast. We are present in Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, Tripura, and Sikkim. Especially in Northeast, which we understand to a large extent decently, the land availability itself is very, very less. It's a landlocked place. What kind of sporting facilities that you recommend to be built in that area? Because some of the strongest and award-winning or medal-winning sportsmen have come from Northeast. So in terms of laying a focus on Northeast, by taking into consideration the restrictions out there, what is your recommendation for the focus of the government?
Sure, sir. First of all, I don't think, while certainly it is a mountainous region and availability of flat land may be limited, but it's again, we have done a lot of work in the Northeast, at least 100 projects in the Northeast. It is not as bad as it may seem in terms of land availability. So to that extent, there are probably at least, I would imagine 30, 40 synthetic turf football fields already in the Northeast. It's that prevalent already. And many others which are natural grass football fields, only because the development has not yet reached where those are converted to synthetic turf. So in terms of large football fields or large sports field, I would count football and cricket as the largest ones that take up space. Of course, developing these may be more a cost factor than a land availability issue. Having said that, you don't always need necessarily an international size field for grassroots level development. In fact, as they come up in the age group sports, they need to just get the nuances of the game, the basics that they learn. Much of it has to do actually with physical fitness and some footballing skills, or it could be cricketing skills. You don't necessarily always need the largest international size, world-class standard, highly expensive facility for that matter. Incidentally, also because of the physical characteristics, where maybe they are not the tallest, and therefore in the Northeast, many sports where height is not a disadvantage, not having height is probably the right sports to choose. Many are, obviously good at football. There are some theories that football may need tall players, but there are many other indoor sports, for example, that don't need space, don't need great investment, and rely a lot on agility and quick reaction and other aspects that probably are quite an attribute of the Northeast as well. And there is fundamentally a good sports culture that celebrates good successes there. So I don't think, therefore, there would be anything that's fundamentally different in the Northeast by way of geography as much as probably by physical characteristics, perhaps.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think that clears the air around what is our perception comparing Northeast to non-Northeast. I would not say mainstream. That's unfair to say. So non-Northeast vis-a-vis Northeast, I think, as you recommended, I think there's nothing special as a restriction that we need to look at. I think they are more endowed to be sportsmen given the ethnic pool that they come from. And amazingly, we have also seen that in our own campuses, we have a thriving sports culture in spite of some kind of a restriction that is available in terms of flat grounds. We have not gone into facilities like what you have done at various locations, but wherever the facility was available within the restricted space itself, students and faculty members have made it a point to celebrate sports, continuous activities that they conduct around the year. I think that shows that I think sporting is of a different level in Northeast. Thank you, sir. There is another observation. When you look at cricket matches in countries like UK or say Australia more especially, for example, when you look at Brisbane as a stadium, I've been there in person also. I find the turf or the grass, depending on the case it is, there's a designer haircut given to the grass. I mean, is it on the natural grass or is it on the artificial grass? That's the clarification I wanted.
It's very much natural grass. It's just a means of how the cut is made and the angle at which it is cut. So, in fact, it is not uncommon now in India as well. We've recently done a football field. Actually, it's actually part of a larger stadium, athletic track, all that in President Murmu's hometown in Orissa. It's called the Rairangpur Sports Stadium. So, I don't know if I have a picture handy, but that's something that also has a checkered or a patterned kind of a cut that gives a more aesthetic look to it, but it's 100% natural grass for sure.
Fantastic, sir. Thank you so much. Another observation is that, sir, if you go to any decathlon store in this country, in most of the places, even B class towns as well, wherever decathlon is present, you see a large number of people thronging those spaces and buying equipment, buying apparel, and then which is an indicator that people are taking to exercising, sporting, playing, and that obsession to work against your obesity, obsession with fitness and health consciousness. All these are rising. Most of these products, which are not just Decathlon, but there are other product companies also, especially for other sports like say cycling. A large majority of the equipment that's available in this country is Indian origin products itself. Is that an indication that we are maturing in those facets of sporting infrastructure?
Oh, certainly. I think there's no reason for it not to be. I think in that sense, compared to say 20 years ago, Indian industry across, and not just sports for that matter, in most others, are doing far more of the value addition that needs to be there, and not just supplies of raw material alone, and able to replicate world-class products, innovate many on their own, and also, of course, export. So, yes, it is first of all a very good indicator of the cultural shift that people of all ages are far more health conscious and fitness conscious, and I think that's a good trend. And certainly, it is nicely supplemented by a lot more Indian products that are available. To some extent, there may also be a government directive that a certain amount of sourcing, like in IKEA, that 30 or 40% is sourced from within India as well and not directly imported. So this is that way. The government policy is also encouraging to see that many of these chains not only source here, and if they find that it is good, they may find it viable to have it actually globally in their stores all over.
Fantastic, sir. That's a very good thing. I think that's the right kind of desirable direction in which we should progress. Sir, I'll request Kush Srivastava to ask his question.
Hi. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening to all. My question is, first of all, I really like your logo behind your chair in terms of, absolutely nice. Very progressive kind of a thing. Okay, my question is, in fact, two, three points are really in the point. What's your time period from idea to reality?
Time period for?
From idea to reality.
In the case of our business, you're saying?
Yeah. I understand that it will depend on the nature of sport, and it will depend on the size and but
I agree.
a typical life cycle.
I would say in our case, again, because ours is not really a product. We are more let me say, we are a design and build company, and therefore we fall more into the category of an EPC, an engineering, procurement, and construction company. So we
Okay.
are not manufacturers of any product, I must clarify.
Mhm.
We are
Mhm.
associated globally with some of the world leaders in their respective space, and we are
Mhm.
like a system integrator, if I may use that term. So to
Okay.
that extent, having clarified that, I must mention that probably from the time the idea came to do something in this domain till the time we probably actually got incorporated and then eventually got our first serious project. We did South Asia's first FIFA standard football field for the Chowgule group in late 2005. So I would say that was more like a 18 to 24-month lead time between when the idea popped in and when we felt that, okay, we are getting some sort of traction.
Okay. In terms of cost and gestation period, you mentioned it's about 18 to 24 months. Okay.
Right.
So typically, what would be, if I am an investor, what would I expect to be my gestation period and the roughly percentage of ROI?
So it is slightly difficult to answer that because it depends on the nature of the business that you are looking to bring in. In our case,
Okay.
again, because we are a very asset light company, and we
Mm.
also, I was just moving back from India, from the US. I don't come from a business family, and I was looking to just put in all my savings here. So we were, I may have just subconsciously chosen an asset light model. But for somebody else, for example, on the other extreme, if you were going to develop a product, depending on the product, it can be from a few lakhs to a few crores. Because is it an IT product? Is it a new engineering product? Is it something that has technology in it? And before you're able to even, can you patent it before you get your first customer? That investment in that case can be very high. So you have to be able to choose that, and sometimes the right mentors and even the right venture capitalists can probably guide you on that. So it will depend on the idea. In our case, because we were keeping it very light, it was more about having a very small office. We were like a 1, 2 people company, so to say, at that time, and kept it as minimal of a sunk expenditure or investment, you could call it, as possible before we begin to see enough encouragement from the market that we're getting orders on a sustained basis, that we can begin to invest more in people and in equipment and other things that allow us to grow. So we were kind of careful in the way that we go about. Of course, today there are also, I must mention, angel investors, of course, venture capitalists, and I believe there's a merchant banker or someone in the audience as well, who may be more amenable to invest in a good idea, and where you have no choice but to actually seek funds to create something of that scale. It is not something that's going to just happen from personal savings. So if you have that kind of a completely groundbreaking idea, and you have enough evidence to back it, and you're addressing something that can be solving, like they typically say, $1 billion problem, you will then, if you come from the right background, again, a lot of weightage is also given to the promoter profile. Are they coming with some domain expertise? Are they coming with prior experience of that business? Are the set of co-founders who are coming in complementing each other very well? So many factors that may be the guidance for them to take a chance, because it is still a chance. Your venture idea may be sounding very promising, but it is still a risk capital anyway.
And last question is that last point is that what's your competition in India?
What's our competition in our space?
In India.
Oh, there are quite a few. I mean, at every level, we are largely seen as the leaders in this space, but we have a couple of well-known companies who are competitors. One of them is Shiv Naresh Sports in Delhi, and incidentally, they are also quite a well-known name in the sports apparel business. So you see a lot of tracksuits and t-shirts and all that with Shiv Naresh, so they get some unfair advantage over us because of the nice visibility. But yeah, so Shiv Naresh is there. Then there is a company called Syncots. Then there are quite a few companies, mid-tier companies, who are nicely coming up, growing well. Gallant Sports, Michezo, and I can think of a couple of names like that. So there are providers at every level, I would say. There are some who may be local operators in a city who may just do a standalone, a tennis court or a standalone basketball court or a small work for a field. And there are others who may be operating at a larger scale, doing across multiple cities or covering entire country as well. So there are players at different ranges as well.
Right. Thank you so much and all the best.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for engaging in that response. Before Mr. Madhurao raises his question, I have one thing, sir. In urban, the land scarcity, which is a reality, what is generally being talked about is vertical stadiums. Probably you can help us understand what are vertical stadiums and how, say, there are multiple schools in a city, how we can have integrated school infrastructure for, the sports infrastructure for schools can be done. Are there any examples in this space, and should we move in that direction?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think in any environment where it's a space constraint, clearly the innovative solution being vertically developing it. It's not uncommon. Many indoor stadiums also now have, for example, either a swimming pool at the ground floor or multiple badminton court, whichever requires a high roof, a high ceiling. And then to one side, you will have a structure that at every floor where you don't need high ceiling, for those sports, could be table tennis, could be many board games, could be boxing, wrestling, gym, to any of these that, where height is not a mandatory thing. So in larger structures wide enough, so when you're having a multi-story structure, if you plan well ahead and have enough ceiling height, it can begin to accommodate more sports. Of course, it needs planning well ahead so that you're not having pillars coming in between. So you need a pillar-free arena based on minimum dimensions that you need, and still having enough emergency exit kind of facilities there. So definitely, without a doubt, I think in all these structures, to be able to accommodate suitable sports infrastructure of all indoor sports, obviously, we can't help with the fact that outdoor sports can't come in, or the large ones can't, but still you can cater for, I would say, 80% of the sports within well-built structures if planned well ahead.
Right. Thank you very much. Mr. Madhurao, for your question.
Sir, Sudhakar, good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks a lot for getting very good guests onto weekly sessions of leadership. Anil Garu, I have a few quick questions. It's all a subset and interconnected.
Sure.
So it was nice listening to you. In fact, last week also there was a time meet, I believe, where you were interfacing with various entrepreneurs.
Yes,
So
correct.
coincidentally, being member across all the forums, I'm virtually getting to meet you more often.
I see.
So coming to the
Hope
question,
to
sir.
meet you in person soon. Yeah.
Sure. Three quick questions, sir. One is, do you have any plans for moving into the golf also? Because, like you said, in US, all the golf courses are where most of the states take prestige in advertising or like that. In India, it's all mostly the reality projects which try to do the USP selling. So, do you have a footprint there? First question. The second question is, a friend of mine who is well tuned to the capital markets 3 years back bought your company to my radar, saying, in fact, their the turfs or stadiums do all the limelight and talking, whereas the promoters are all backstage without coming on to capital markets. The day they realize the potential and the resources offered by capital markets, the visibility and the brand image is going to be at a different level. So my friend Mr. Harisurya says, like Alexander the Great, it will be Anil the Great who will have the majority market share in Indian sports arena. So the third, sir, are you looking at private equity or tapping the capital markets? So if so, how soon?
Sure, sir. I'll address all these three. So first of all, on the golf segment, we do have a footprint there. We do have some, actually synthetic turf is also used in golf courses. So we've done many practice greens in some golf courses, as well as some mini executive golf courses, as they call it, par threes, those have been done, and of course driving ranges, all of that. So there is element of that. There is also natural grass, some work that we've done with golf courses in some places. But I must mention that there are excellent golf courses in India that are not necessarily linked to a real estate project. So I want to remove that misconception. It's not necessarily true. I would say almost all the capital cities in India, at least the top 10, 12 larger states, have golf courses of great stature, of great quality, and not in any manner linked to any real estate project. And I must mention that among all these, the one in Delhi, in the DLF golf course, is truly world class. It's considered also one of the best in Asia, a very tough course, and a very high profile, high caliber international championships happen there. So in that sense, yes, we do a bit of golf. It's not a very core area for us, but a lot of golf projects are also in India that are not necessarily linked to a real estate project, though that's also becoming a fancy for a lot of builders to kind of link it, and there are enough buyers who probably find it interesting. And I don't have a problem with that. That's good, as long as incidentally also, a sports facility is getting developed along with some real estate venture, that why not, that we should always welcome. To your second question, on the capital markets, I guess the second and third are linked a little bit. So yeah, we are looking to consider probably maybe an SME IPO, or maybe we'll be open even to private equity also or something. But yeah, so I think incidentally we are in discussion on some investment as well at the moment. But I think once this financial year is over, we'll probably explore that a bit more in the upcoming months.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Good luck, sir.
Thank you, Madhugar. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. One of the recent examples that's fresh in our mind is how Qatar has catapulted itself into a different perception altogether by hosting FIFA. It started putting in lots of sports infrastructure, especially the football stadia and other infrastructure for transportation and all, and reaped benefits of the what is called sports tourism to begin with, and of course additional derivative economic benefits that followed. I think with all things working in the right direction, if we get to do the Olympics in 2036 as being desired, I'm sure we will also catapult ourselves into one of the top Olympic nations. And then probably that culture templating will also move in the right direction in our favor. So I want to actually thank you, sir, for so patiently elaborating so many points where we had a lot of queries, sought clarifications, and tried to understand from your perspective also in terms of this very important area of work, knowledge, and entrepreneurship. The large number of people who have assembled today around the screen have shared good questions, and it helped us landscape this conversation. We want to credit them. We want to thank them for this. But the medal goes to you, sir. Both 1, 2, and 3, all the places go to you for putting things in the right perspective and helping us understand this game, quote unquote, much better. So thanks. We will request you to share your slides with us. It will help us prepare a summary. What we usually do is at the end of this session, we write a summary. We also have an edited video, both put up on our website. For those who missed this session, they can actually go back and learn. And this is to facilitate learning. All are allowed. So therefore, we need to provide for a summary. I request you to share the slides.
Certainly.
And also, we will request you for a meeting after this at your convenient time, and we'll probably invite you to our campus. We have a large campus in Hyderabad in Shankarpalli.
Yes, I've been there. Yes.
You've been there. So I think there's a greater room for us in terms of leveling up or rising the sports quotient inside the campus also. But then there is one for the road for me. So the rising clamor for pickleball around the country, especially in cities like Hyderabad, Bangalore, Chennai, and probably in other states as well. I find this going up quite a bit in the recent past. What is the reason, according to you, for this rise? Is it because it is a poor man's tennis, or is it because the lazy tennis players are becoming pickleball players? I know I'm making it provocative, but that's for Mr. Anil Kumar.
No, I mean, I don't attribute it to to any laziness, frankly. I think it is just that the entry barrier is lower for people who are looking to take up sport. And frankly, anything that gets people to get off the couch, switch off their device and go out and, play half an hour, 1 hour, is always welcome. I think also the fact that it is a smaller court allows courts to be fit in more places. You don't require larger place, especially in cities, which also means that your investment to build a pickleball court is hardly single digit lakhs actually. So it's very easy to put that up. The equipment is not very expensive to have. You're not even having the expense of replacing like a shuttlecock every few points or anything like that. So in that sense, it's a very, very widely welcoming game. People at all ages can play based on their fitness level. Anybody who's able to just move around even a few steps, on the court and just get engaged, in the flow of the sport, it gets much, much better, health benefits than without it. So I would greatly respect any sport that, I'm not, I think very welcome that pickleball is become so popular.
Yeah, it has become really popular, sir.
Right.
I see in Jubilee Hills, Secunderabad, Picket, and of course, Shankarpalli area also, many facilities that have sprung up. Apart from what we talk about, multi-sports pay and play facilities that have come up. One very close to
It's
our
not
campus.
Sorry,
Sorry.
I was just saying that not just here, frankly, even in the US,
Yeah,
many tennis clubs that used to have, for example, 10 tennis courts have repurposed in a manner where about five of them have been converted to multiple pickleball courts and only five remain as full-time tennis courts. So it's a global phenomena. It's not just Hyderabad alone.
fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
In Shankarpalli, I have noticed one pay and play facility. Apart from the sports facilities that they have created and well managed, and the look of it is quite upmarketish, there are additional facilities for multi-purpose. For example, there is a doctor's clinic, and that clinic is not necessarily a sporting clinic.
Right.
Okay, so it's like, there's a shop in shop kind of a facility, or a shop in a stadium kind of a facility that they have created. And normal, regular shopping opportunities are there on the facade, on the front side, but behind you have sporting facilities.
Yes.
Probably, I think less of cinema theaters and more of pay and play facilities will rise in future. That's what I hope, sir. And you give a lot of optimism in terms of the business opportunities that are available for us in the area of sports, from equipment to apparel to engineering to analytics. And of course, we should also look at the international market as well once you have the products to or the goods to export. So many inputs you have shared with us. I'm quite buoyed. I'm quite optimistic about the future. I want to thank you for that, sir. And I'll request Professor Prasad if he has any last query, and then we'll close it.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's one element which I wanted to bring in, and this is when you talked about culture. Education plays, and that age plays a lot, plays a very important role. And while the national education policy talks about interdisciplinarity, lots of things, there are no mechanisms that we see by which it gets integrated into regular education. There's a lot of scope to do that, whether it's terms of courses or programs or even rewarding activities into credits or marks. I think the moment that happens, the scale rises. Number of people who start participating. Sports management is one area. Similarly, a lot to do with medicine. Some of those materials that you're talking about, uh, ideas will come. I mean, even if you are doing it in your engineering, I mean, or somewhere else, even in school, these things keep, remain at the back of the mind in terms of the ideas, the opportunities that one may assess. So you have been a student as well, and any perspectives on this?
Not really sure what I could say on that, sir. It's a question that I also grapple with. in terms of how the ideas that people may have could be channeled towards actually making it into finally a venture. I think it could be at best a forum. I think there are, somebody has to be at least taking the step of articulating it into some kind of a very preliminary basic, even if it's a very raw document in terms of what exactly their intent is. And I think at every level there is mentorship that is available. I think as one member just now mentioned, I'm part of TIE as well, the Indus Entrepreneurs. I think there is something called open mic there, forum where people with ideas can submit it to the TIE secretariat. At least a first level filtration happens. Whether the idea is also fundamentally a viable idea. It is not something that just because it's your idea, you're in love with it and you think it's the greatest idea, but obviously it has to meet the muster of others who are evaluating it. They are able to then provide you the forum like open mic, where every month TIE allows about, I think, 8 or 10 companies to come and present their ideas. The audience includes mentors, financiers, there are investors as well. So that could be one way. That some others then graduate on to probably being a T-Hub or other places. So there are many, many ways that they could all probably, whatever are the ideas that are there, have channels to be nurtured, compared to even 20, 30 years ago when people would have been lost with that. But they have to take that first step of being able to articulate what exactly they are looking to be able to solve with that idea. I hope
Excellent.
that
I think we are talking about building up an ecosystem and connecting the various pieces in that particular
it is there,
chain.
sir. It's very much there. And I think people just need to be more aware that these are forums that allow for these. There are Indian ages. There's so many forums now compared to, there's far more of a culture to promote entrepreneurs and, new ideas than it was a generation ago.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very
Appreciate it
much.
so much.
This
Thank you.
is a very good session where sports infrastructure or sports tech is being pitched as the sunrise sector, next sunrise sector like our edtech or fintech. And hopefully it is less policy dependent, although policy makes a very important contribution to the rise of sporting culture in this country and also sports excellence in this country. The opportunities lie at all the levels, at institution level, that is school level infrastructure, at elite training centers, and also at recreational and community sports. At all levels, there are huge opportunities. And that's a fantastic session, sir. Thank you so much for your valuable time and expertise in shaping our thinking for the current topic on hand. I would remain grateful to you and keep in touch with you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, Professor Sudhakar and Professor Prasad. Appreciate that opportunity and very glad to be part of this series.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what we have for this week. Next week on 27th of March, we will come back with another leader at 6:30 p.m. on 27th of March. And till then, I think you go through the YouTube channel of Sports Tech Limited. We'll have much more to understand how it was done. And I'm sure there are field level pictures and videos available with them for us to get an up close picture. And the joy of, working in the layers of engineering is altogether very different when you are building the sports tech infrastructure. That's for this week, and see you next week. Have a great weekend and a good night, and wish you all a happy Ramzan.